He saved an Apache woman from certain death. What her tribe did next changed his life. He was not afraid of hard work, nor of facing challenges. For John, life outside the crowded cities was full of freedom, adventure, and a sense of purpose. He had spent many years exploring remote parts of Arizona, learning to read the signs of nature, the tracks of animals, the changes in the wind, and the warning sounds of danger. But on this particular day, something happened that would change his life forever. It was early in the morning when John set out on his usual hike. The sky was painted in soft shades of orange and pink, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves. Birds were chirping, and the air smelled fresh and earthy. He carried only a small backpack with some water, basic medical supplies, and a few tools he thought he might need. He loved traveling light. It made him feel closer to the land and more alert to everything around him. As he walked along a narrow trail near a remote canyon, he noticed something strange. The usual quiet of the forest was broken by a faint sound, someone crying out. At first, John thought it might be an animal in distress. But as he listened carefully, he realized the sound was human. It was a woman's voice, filled with fear and pain. Without a second thought, John ran toward the noise, following it through thick bushes and uneven rocks. Soon, he came to a small clearing and saw her. A young woman was trapped under a fallen tree. Her face was pale and her clothes were torn and dirty. Her leg was pinned beneath the heavy trunk, and she was struggling to move. Her eyes were wide with fear, and she was trembling, not just from pain, but from the sheer panic of being alone and helpless in such a wild place. John could see she had been there for some time. The ground around her was marked with small signs of struggle, scratches on the dirt, broken branches, and footprints that seemed to lead nowhere. Without hesitation, John dropped his backpack and ran to her. He assessed the situation quickly. The tree was heavy, much too heavy for her to lift on her own. John grabbed the strongest branches he could find and pushed with all his strength. It took several attempts, sweat pouring down his face, muscles straining, but finally the tree shifted enough for her to free her leg. She cried out in relief and pain, but John gently helped her sit up and checked her injuries. She had several bruises and cuts, and her leg was clearly injured. John carefully removed small stones and dirt from the wounds and applied a clean bandage he had in his backpack. He spoke to her softly, trying to calm her fear. "You're safe now. Don't worry." "I'm here to help you," he said. At first, she was too shocked and hurt to respond. She just stared at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear, gratitude, and disbelief. Slowly, she managed to speak. Her voice was weak, almost a whisper, but John could understand that she had been separated from her village and left alone after some kind of attack. John listened carefully, giving her time to rest and regain her strength. He knew he needed to keep her calm and hopeful. Panic could make injuries worse, and she needed to trust him. For the next few hours, John stayed by her side. He gave her water, helped her eat a small snack he carried, and told her stories of his travels to distract her from the pain. He knew that sometimes, just having someone nearby, someone who cared, could make a world of difference. Slowly, the young woman, whose name he learned was Ayana, began to relax. She realized that John was genuinely there to help, not just passing by. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, John realized they couldn't stay in the clearing. It was too exposed, and they needed to find a safer place where Ayana could rest and recover. John knew the terrain well. He carefully lifted her, supporting her weight, and they began to move toward a nearby cave he knew offered shelter. It was not comfortable, but it would protect them from the sun, wind, and any dangerous animals that might be nearby. The walk was slow. Every step was a challenge, especially for Ayana, whose leg was injured. John encouraged her, helping her over rocks and guiding her around fallen branches. He made sure she didn't put too much weight on the injured leg, carrying her when necessary. Along the way, they talked in small, cautious sentences. Yana told him a little about her family and her village. John shared some stories of his adventures. They laughed softly at small things, trying to keep the mood light despite the danger surrounding them. When they reached the cave, John set down his backpack and made a small area comfortable with some leaves and soft ground. He helped Ayana lie down and examined her leg more closely. It was swollen, and he knew it needed rest. He fashioned a temporary splint from a sturdy branch and strips of cloth from his bag. He also cleaned her wounds again and applied more bandages. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the canyon, and the air was cooling rapidly. John started a small, controlled fire near the entrance of the cave to keep them warm and to provide some light. That night, John stayed awake, keeping watch. He had learned from experience that danger could come at any moment in the wild. He listened carefully to the sounds of the night, the rustling of leaves, the distant calls of animals, and the gentle breathing of Ayana as she rested. He felt a protective responsibility for her. She had trusted him with her life, and he knew he could not fail her. Over the next few days, John tended to Ayana. He gave her water and food, checked her injuries, and helped her regain her strength. He also watched the surrounding area for any signs of danger. Slowly, Ayana began to move more confidently, though she still had difficulty walking. John encouraged her to stay positive, telling her that they would soon find a way back to her village. During this time, they developed a bond built on trust and respect. Yana had seen strangers before, but she had never met someone so selfless and kind. John, on the other hand, had never encountered someone with such quiet strength and determination. Even in her weakened state, she showed courage and resilience. John admired her spirit, and he felt a deep sense of responsibility to help her reach safety. By the end of the week, Ayana was able to walk short distances with John's support. They planned their journey carefully, taking into account the harsh terrain and possible dangers. John knew the path ahead would be difficult, but he was determined to help her reach her people. This experience, which began with a chance encounter, was becoming a story of survival, trust, and human kindness. As they prepared to leave the cave, John looked at Ayana and smiled reassuringly. "We're going to get you home," he said. She nodded, feeling a mixture of hope and nervousness. Neither of them knew exactly what awaited them, but they knew they had each other. And sometimes, that was enough to face even the most uncertain challenges. That first part of their journey was not just a rescue, it was the beginning of a life-changing story. Both John and Ayana would soon discover that one act of courage, one decision to help someone in need, could lead to events neither of them could have imagined. And in the quiet of the canyon, surrounded by nature, a friendship and trust were forming that would alter the course of their lives forever. The morning after they left the cave, John and Ayana began the next stage of their journey. The canyon walls glowed softly in the early sunlight, and a cool breeze carried the scent of pine and wildflowers. Ayana walked slowly, leaning on John for support, her injured leg still weak and painful. Despite this, her determination was clear in her eyes. She wanted to return to her village, to the people who had raised her, and to find some sense of safety after the chaos she had experienced. John watched her carefully, making sure she didn't push herself too far. He had traveled many remote paths before, but helping someone injured made the journey far more challenging. Every step had to be calculated, every loose stone avoided, and every sudden drop in the trail noted. John carried extra water, knowing that dehydration could become dangerous in the desert heat. He also checked the surrounding area frequently, wary of wild animals or other unexpected threats. Even in a quiet morning, the wilderness held hidden dangers. As they walked, John tried to keep Ayana's spirits up. He told her small stories about his past adventures, about moments when he had been alone in the wild and faced challenges. Sometimes he spoke of funny accidents, like slipping into a river or being chased by a curious deer. Yana listened with a weak but growing smile, and soon she began to share some stories of her own. She spoke of her childhood in the village, of running through the open fields, of learning the ways of the land from her parents, and of the traditions she loved. Hearing her speak made John realize how strong and resourceful she truly was. Even though she had been through a traumatic experience, her spirit had not broken. Her voice carried a mixture of fear and hope, a reflection of her survival instincts and the courage she had learned from her people. John felt respect and admiration growing inside him. He knew that helping her was not just a duty, it was a privilege. The journey was not easy. The terrain grew steeper and more uneven as they approached the higher ridges. Loose rocks shifted under their feet, and the heat of the sun made even simple steps exhausting. At one point, Ayana slipped slightly, and John caught her just in time. He gently adjusted the temporary splint on her leg, ensuring it was still secure. "We're doing fine," he said with a reassuring smile. "Just a little farther. You're stronger than you think." Ayana nodded, her face determined, though her muscles trembled from fatigue. They stopped frequently to rest. John found shaded spots under rock outcrops or small trees where they could sit and drink water. During these breaks, he often checked Ayana's injuries carefully. He cleaned any small cuts, applied fresh bandages, and made sure her leg was still properly supported. Each time, he praised her strength and courage, knowing that confidence could be just as important as physical recovery. Ayana learned to trust him completely. She relied on him not only for support but also for the sense of safety he provided. One evening, as the sun began to dip toward the horizon, they found a quiet stream. The water sparkled in the fading light, and John suggested they rest there for the night. He collected some wood and built a small fire, keeping it controlled and safe. Yana dipped her hands in the cool water, the relief on her face evident. They ate the simple food they had carried, and John taught her how to use small stones to sharpen sticks for walking aids. The night was calm, and the stars appeared one by one, spreading across the sky like tiny lights. Around the fire, their conversation deepened. Ayana told John more about the attack on her village, speaking of fear, confusion, and the desperate need to survive. John listened carefully, offering comfort without judgment. "You did everything you could to stay safe," he said, "and now we'll get you home." Yana felt a small warmth of relief. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to believe that she might actually return to her family. The next morning, they continued their journey. John had studied the maps and paths of the area, and he knew the fastest route to the village. However, the path was not straightforward. They had to navigate narrow ridges, cross small rivers, and climb over fallen logs. Every step required patience and care, especially for Yana, whose leg still caused her pain. John encouraged her, breaking the journey into small goals. "We'll reach that rock, then the next tree, then the hilltop, step by step." She followed his instructions, sometimes leaning heavily on him, but always moving forward. As they walked, John noticed changes in the landscape. The air grew cooler, and the vegetation became denser. Birds of different kinds filled the trees with calls, and the wind carried a new, earthy scent. The area reminded John of the resilience of nature. No matter how harsh the environment, life found a way to survive. He reflected on the parallels with Ayana's journey. She had survived the chaos of her village attack, and she was continuing to move forward despite her pain and fear. They also had to be cautious of other dangers. Tracks of wild animals appeared along the trail, and John made sure to avoid potential confrontations. He taught Ayana how to recognize warning signs, how to move quietly, and how to stay alert. She listened intently, absorbing every bit of knowledge. She began to feel empowered, realizing that she could contribute to her own safety as much as John did. The bond between them grew stronger, built on mutual trust and reliance. Several days into their journey, John noticed that Ayana's leg was improving slowly. Her steps became steadier, her endurance slightly better each day. John celebrated these small victories with encouragement and praise. "You're doing amazing," he said. "I knew you could do this." Ayanna smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment that lifted her spirits. Despite the pain and the exhaustion, she was beginning to believe that she could reach her village alive and well. During one particularly challenging day, they had to cross a wide, rocky stream. The current was strong, and the rocks were slippery. John went first, showing Ayanna the safest stepping points. When it was her turn, she hesitated, fear flickering in her eyes. John extended his hand. "I've got you. Step carefully, one at a time." Together they crossed safely, and Ayanna felt a surge of relief and confidence. Each challenge they overcame reinforced her trust in John and her belief in her own strength. By the end of the week, they were close to the outskirts of the village. The landscape was familiar to Ayanna, rolling hills, familiar plant life, and even distant smoke from the village fires. Her heart lifted with hope. She quickened her pace slightly, leaning on John with renewed energy. "I can see it," she said softly, her voice filled with emotion. "It's just ahead." John smiled, feeling a sense of pride and satisfaction. Their journey had been difficult, but they were almost there. As they approached the village, John remained cautious. He knew the elders would be wary of strangers, especially someone who had been traveling with Ayanna. He prepared himself to speak honestly and respectfully if questioned. Ayanna, sensing his readiness, held his hand briefly and whispered a quiet "thank you." That small gesture meant more to John than words could express. It was a reminder of why he had risked so much and persevered through the hardships of the journey. Finally, they reached the edge of the village. Ayanna's family and neighbors were there, concerned and anxious. The moment she saw familiar faces, she rushed forward, tears of relief streaming down her face. John stayed back, allowing her to be reunited with her loved ones. He watched quietly, feeling a mixture of happiness and humility. His role as her rescuer was complete, but he also understood that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in both their lives. That day marked a turning point. Ayanna was safe, and John had proven that courage, compassion, and determination could make a real difference in someone's life. Yet, the story was far from over. What awaited John next would change the way he saw the world and himself, forever. But in that moment, surrounded by the warmth of the village and the relief of survival, John allowed himself to feel something rare. A quiet, deep satisfaction that comes from knowing you did everything you could to help another human being in need. As John and Ayanna entered the outskirts of her village, the mood changed instantly. The familiar sights and smells of home brought a mix of relief and tension. Families were gathered near small huts and open fire pits, and children played in the dirt paths, unaware of the recent dangers their village had faced. Ayanna's heart raced with a mixture of hope and fear. She knew she was close to safety, but she also knew that outsiders were rare in the village, and that her companion, John, might not be immediately welcomed. The moment they arrived, Ayanna's family rushed toward her. Her mother and father, their faces lined with worry and exhaustion, enveloped her in tight embraces. Tears flowed freely as they held her close, relieved that she had survived the dangerous journey. Neighbors and other villagers watched quietly, their curiosity growing as they noticed John standing a few steps behind. He was a stranger, tall, strong, and clearly not from the area, yet his calm and respectful demeanor caught their attention. Ayanna's father stepped forward, his eyes narrowed slightly as he studied John. "Who is this man?" he asked, his voice firm but not unkind. Ayanna explained quickly and clearly. "Father, this is John. He found me trapped in the canyon and helped me return safely. Without him, I might not have made it home." The father's eyes softened as he looked at his daughter, then at the man who had risked so much to protect her. However, the village elders were not easily convinced. John understood that he would need to earn their trust, and he prepared himself to answer their questions honestly and respectfully. The elders gathered around, their expressions serious. Their eyes, sharp and wise, seemed to look straight through him, assessing not only his words but his character. This was a tradition of the tribe, a test to determine whether an outsider could be trusted and whether they came with good intentions or hidden motives. The elders asked John many questions. They wanted to know why he had been traveling alone, how he had come across Ayanna, and why he had chosen to help her. John responded with complete honesty, speaking calmly and respectfully. "I was hiking through the canyon when I heard her cries for help," he said. "I could not leave her there. I did not know her, but I knew she needed help. I only wanted to ensure she returned safely to her family." His words were simple, yet they carried a sincerity that the elders could sense. One elder, a tall woman with silver hair and piercing eyes, stepped closer. "Do you understand the customs of our people?" she asked. "Do you know how we value trust, respect, and honor?" John nodded. "I may not know every custom, but I understand the importance of respect. I came here with honesty, and I promise to honor your ways as long as I am welcomed among you." The elder's gaze softened slightly, though she remained cautious. Trust was not given lightly. It had to be proven through actions and integrity. The villagers watched closely as the elders continued their questions. Some were skeptical, while others were curious. John remained patient, answering each question carefully. He spoke not only about his actions but also about his intentions. He emphasized that he had not sought recognition or reward, that his only goal had been to help Ayanna survive and return home. Slowly, the tone of the gathering shifted. The sincerity in his voice, combined with the obvious care he had shown during the journey, began to win over the crowd. After hours of questioning and observation, the elders decided that John would undergo a small test of character. It was not a physical test, but a demonstration of his integrity and respect for the tribe. He was asked to participate in a simple ritual, one that symbolized trust and acceptance. John accepted without hesitation. He understood that this ritual was more than tradition. It was a way for the tribe to ensure the safety and unity of their people. The ritual involved a series of tasks that tested John's attentiveness, patience, and willingness to follow the tribe's guidance. First, he was asked to help prepare a communal meal using traditional methods. John worked carefully, chopping firewood, preparing ingredients, and learning the cooking techniques from the villagers. Though it was unfamiliar work, he approached it with humility and focus, asking questions when needed and showing respect for the customs. The villagers watched his every move, noting his attitude and dedication. Next, John was asked to assist with small repairs around the village, fixing a fence, carrying water, and helping with simple chores. Each task was an opportunity for him to demonstrate patience, kindness, and a willingness to serve the community rather than himself. John completed each task with care, showing that he valued the trust being extended to him. Ayanna, watching from nearby, felt pride and relief. She had trusted him from the start, and now her village could see what she already knew, that John was honorable and kind-hearted. During the evening, the elders asked John to share a story from his life, something that would reveal his character and values. John spoke of his experiences traveling alone in nature, helping those in need, and learning to respect the land and people he encountered. He told stories of animals he had rescued, hikers he had guided, and moments when he had faced danger yet chosen compassion over fear. His words were honest and heartfelt, and the villagers listened in silence, sensing the truth in every word. By the end of the day, the elders had made their decision. They gathered the villagers and addressed John. "You have shown patience, respect, and honesty," the tall elder woman said. "You have earned our trust and the trust of our people. Your actions have demonstrated courage and compassion. For this, we honor you as a friend of our tribe. A hush fell over the crowd, and then a collective sense of approval swept through the village. People began to smile, nod, and even applaud softly. John felt a deep sense of relief and gratitude. As part of the acceptance, the elders invited John to participate in a traditional ceremony. This ceremony symbolized not only their gratitude for saving Ayanna, but also the bond that had formed between him and the tribe. They presented him with a symbolic gift, a beautifully crafted token that represented trust, friendship, and the values of the community. John accepted it humbly, feeling the weight of its significance. It was not merely a gift, it was a promise of connection, of belonging, and of shared humanity. Over the following days, John began to learn more about the daily life of the village. He observed their routines, participated in their activities, and continued to show respect for their customs. He shared his own knowledge in return, teaching some practical skills for survival in the wild, while always being careful to honor their traditions. The villagers began to see him not just as a stranger or a rescuer, but as a trusted friend and ally. Ayanna also flourished in this environment. With her injuries healing and her spirits lifted, she spent time with her family and friends, grateful for John's presence but also happy to return to the life she knew. She introduced John to many members of her community, praising his courage and kindness. Her pride in him and her gratitude for his actions became apparent to all. John, in turn, respected her connection to her people, understanding that he had become part of something greater than himself. Through this experience, John learned an important lesson about human connection. He had entered the village as a stranger, guided only by a desire to help, yet through honesty, humility, and compassion, he had become accepted and honored by an entire community. He realized that trust could be built not through words alone but through consistent, selfless actions. The elders' cautious approach, their tests, and their rituals were not obstacles. They were lessons in respect, patience, and understanding. By the end of this part of the story, John had earned a place in the hearts of the villagers. He had proven that courage and kindness were universal values, transcending culture and background. He had also deepened his bond with Ayanna, not only as her rescuer, but as someone who had walked with her through danger and uncertainty. Together, they had faced challenges, built trust, and demonstrated that true heroism lies in selfless acts of care and respect. In the quiet moments after the ceremony, John stood outside, watching the sun set over the hills surrounding the village. The sky glowed with shades of gold and purple, and the air was filled with the sounds of children laughing, families talking, and the gentle crackle of evening fires. John felt a sense of peace and fulfillment he had never known before. He had set out on a journey through nature, guided by curiosity and adventure, but he had found something far more profound: a connection to people, a recognition of shared humanity, and the knowledge that one act of courage could ripple through lives in ways he could never have imagined. The morning after the elders' decision, the village was alive with anticipation. Word had spread quickly that John, the man who had saved Ayanna, had been accepted and would be honored in a traditional ceremony. Villagers bustled about, preparing decorations, arranging food, and setting up a small open area near the center of the village for the gathering. Children watched with wide eyes, eager to see what the ceremony would look like, and adults moved with quiet pride, ready to show gratitude for John's bravery. The energy in the village was different from anything John had experienced, warm, respectful, and filled with anticipation. John observed it all with humility. He had not sought recognition. His only concern had been helping Ayanna. Yet here he was, about to be honored by a community whose culture and values were so different from his own. He felt a mixture of pride and nervousness. He wanted to honor the tribe's traditions properly, to show the same respect they had shown him. He had spent the past few days learning their customs, understanding the meaning behind their rituals and participating in daily activities. But this ceremony felt deeper, more sacred. As the sun reached its highest point in the sky, the villagers began to gather in the designated area. Iana stood beside her parents, holding John's hand gently. Her face was filled with emotion, a mixture of pride, gratitude, and relief. She had witnessed the dangers he had faced alongside her and had seen his genuine care every step of the journey. Now, she was proud that her village would recognize his courage. John looked at her, grateful for her trust and presence, and nodded quietly. The elders approached first, dressed in ceremonial attire, their faces painted with traditional patterns symbolizing protection, honor, and courage. They carried items of significance: feathers, small crafted gifts, and symbolic stones. The villagers watched in silence, waiting for the ceremony to begin. John felt a sense of solemnity. This was not just a celebration, it was a meaningful ritual, a connection between him and the tribe he had come to respect so deeply. The lead elder stepped forward and spoke in their native language, his voice steady and commanding. Iana translated softly for John, explaining that the elder was recounting John's actions, how he had saved her life, cared for her injuries, and guided her safely back to the village. He emphasized the courage, patience, and respect John had shown throughout the journey. As John listened, he felt a warmth rise within him, a sense of validation, not for his ego, but for the values he had tried to live by. Next, the villagers presented John with a symbolic gift, carefully crafted from natural materials of the region. It was a small, intricate carving of a hawk, representing protection, guidance, and vision. In the tribe's culture, the hawk was a guardian spirit, watching over those who acted with integrity and courage. The elder placed it in John's hands, and he accepted it with both awe and respect. This was more than a gift. It was a symbol of trust, friendship, and belonging. John felt deeply moved, understanding the weight of the gesture and the responsibility it represented. Following this, the tribe performed a series of ceremonial acts. Iana's parents stepped forward, placing their hands on John's shoulders, acknowledging the vital role he had played in their daughter's survival. Villagers chanted softly, a rhythm that seemed to echo the heartbeat of the land itself. John watched, feeling the unity, strength, and harmony of the tribe. Every movement, every word had meaning, expressing gratitude, protection, and the shared understanding of life's fragility and resilience. During the ceremony, John was invited to speak. He stepped forward, feeling both honored and nervous. He took a deep breath, looking around at the faces of the villagers. "I did not act alone," he said gently. Iana's courage, strength, and determination helped her survive. I only did what anyone should do, help someone in need. I am grateful to you for welcoming me into your community, and I promise to honor your traditions and your trust. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this moment. His words were met with a respectful silence, followed by nods and soft expressions of approval. The elders then performed a final ritual, a symbolic gesture to bind John to the tribe as a friend and protector. They tied a simple cord around his wrist, adorned with small beads and feathers, each representing courage, respect, and the balance between giving and receiving. John felt a profound sense of connection. It was not just about the ceremony or the recognition. It was about the bond formed through trust, shared experiences, and the understanding that life could be changed by selfless actions. Throughout the day, villagers approached John, offering small gifts, handmade crafts, and words of gratitude. Each interaction deepened his sense of belonging. People shared stories of their own challenges, their own acts of bravery, and their hopes for the future. John listened attentively, offering encouragement and learning from their wisdom. He realized that this was more than an honor for one act. It was an immersion into a way of life where community, courage, and respect were cherished above all else. Gianna, watching John throughout the ceremony, felt an overwhelming sense of pride. He had risked himself without hesitation, guided her safely, and now stood as a respected figure in her community. She could see the impact he had made not just on her life, but on the entire village. For her, this was a moment of deep gratitude and recognition that kindness, courage, and integrity could ripple through the lives of many. As the day continued, the villagers prepared a feast in John's honor. Traditional foods, slow-cooked over open fires, were shared with everyone present. John was invited to sit at the central table alongside the elders and Ayana's family. He tasted the flavors, rich and earthy, and marveled at the care and love that had gone into preparing each dish. Conversation flowed naturally, filled with stories, laughter, and shared experiences. For John, this was more than a meal. It was a symbol of acceptance, connection, and shared humanity. Later, as the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of orange, purple, and gold, the ceremony concluded with a quiet reflection. Villagers gathered around a small fire, sharing stories of courage, resilience, and gratitude. John listened, absorbing the wisdom and values of the tribe. He felt humbled and inspired, realizing that the impact of one act of kindness could extend far beyond what he had imagined. His life had been changed not only by the act of saving Hyana, but by the way her community had welcomed, tested, and honored him. That night, John sat outside his small temporary shelter, gazing at the stars above. The village was quiet, except for the soft crackling of the fire and the distant murmurs of families settling in for the evening. He reflected on the journey, from the moment he heard Ayana's cries in the canyon, through the long, difficult trek, to the trust and acceptance of the tribe. Every step had been filled with challenges, lessons, and moments of profound human connection. John felt a sense of fulfillment unlike anything he had experienced before. He realized that life could be unpredictable and that courage was often tested in unexpected ways. Saving Ayana had been the catalyst, but the acceptance and honor from her tribe had revealed something deeper: the power of integrity, compassion, and respect. In this moment, John understood that the world was connected not only through actions, but through the values and intentions behind them. His life had been touched in a way that would guide him forever. Gianna joined him quietly, sitting beside him under the stars. "Thank you," she whispered, "not just for saving me, but for being here, for being yourself." John smiled softly, placing a hand gently on hers. "We helped each other," he said. "And your people have shown me a kindness I will never forget." They sat together in silence, feeling the calm and connection that came after a long journey filled with danger, trust, and learning. By the end of Part 4, John had fully experienced the transformative power of compassion and respect. The ceremony had not only honored his actions, but had also connected him to a culture, a community, and a way of life that valued courage, humility, and trust above all else. His life had been changed forever, not because he sought recognition, but because he had chosen to act selflessly, and the ripple effects of that choice had brought him into a bond that would endure for a lifetime. The morning after the ceremony, the village was quiet yet full of life in its usual rhythm. John woke to the gentle sounds of the community stirring, the clatter of pots, the murmur of conversation, and the soft laughter of children running through the dirt paths. The events of the previous day, the honor, the ceremony, the recognition, still felt surreal. Yet, as he looked around, he understood something profound. The journey he had taken with Ayana was only the beginning of a deeper transformation, one that would shape not only his life but his view of the world forever. Gianna came to him early, her face bright with energy and relief. "Come," she said, taking his hand. "The village wants to show you something." John followed her through the familiar paths, noticing how the people greeted him warmly. It was no longer a polite acknowledgement. It was genuine friendship, respect, and a sense of belonging. For someone who had spent so much time alone in nature, this feeling was both new and deeply moving. He realized that his act of kindness had created a bridge, not only to save a life, but to connect with an entire community in a meaningful way. The elders invited John to participate in the daily life of the village, not as a guest, but as someone they trusted and valued. They showed him how to help with farming tasks, gathering food, and even teaching some simple survival skills to the younger members. John embraced each task with patience and respect, understanding that true integration was not about recognition, but about service and contribution. Every small action became a lesson in humility and gratitude. He watched children mimic his movements when learning to carry water or balance heavy baskets, and he laughed quietly at their determination and energy. In the days that followed, John also spent time learning from the villagers. He discovered the intricacies of their traditions, their ceremonies, stories, and the careful way they treated the land. He saw how the tribe's values were woven into every aspect of life: respect for nature, care for each other, and the importance of trust and honor. He marveled at their knowledge of herbs, their skill in crafting, and their ability to live in harmony with the challenging environment around them. Each lesson was a reminder that wisdom was not only found in books or travel, but also in observation, patience, and listening. Yana's recovery continued steadily. Her leg healed, and with each passing day, she grew stronger and more confident. John guided her in careful exercises, helping her rebuild strength and balance. He also encouraged her to resume her daily routines, joining in chores and community activities. Watching her thrive brought him a sense of quiet satisfaction. She had endured so much, yet she faced each challenge with courage and resilience. He realized that his role in her life had been significant, but it was her own strength and determination that had truly guided their journey. One afternoon, John walked to the edge of the village alone, reflecting on the months that had passed. He thought about the moment he had heard her cries in the canyon, the long trek through difficult terrain, and the challenges of earning the tribe's trust. Each step had been fraught with danger, uncertainty, and doubt, yet it had led him here, to a place where he felt deeply connected, not only to Ayana but to the community and the land itself. He realized that one act of courage, one decision to help, had created a ripple effect far beyond his imagination. The villagers approached him quietly, smiling. One elder spoke, "You have shown courage, kindness, and respect. You are now part of our lives, part of our history. But more importantly, you carry the lessons of our people with you. Use them wisely." John nodded, feeling a weight of responsibility. He understood that the honor he had received was not merely a reward, but a call to live with integrity, compassion, and respect wherever life might take him. Over time, John became more than just a visitor. He became a friend, a helper, and a trusted figure in the community. He celebrated festivals, helped in daily chores, and listened to the stories of the elders, learning lessons that transcended cultural boundaries. Each day reinforced the idea that life was a series of connections, built not by power or wealth, but by trust, courage, and empathy. The villagers had accepted him not for what he could take, but for what he had given, and for his willingness to walk alongside them with humility and respect. Ayana and John often spent evenings by the river that ran near the village, reflecting on their journey. They spoke of fear, courage, hope, and the moments that had tested them most. "I could not have made it without you," Ayana admitted softly one evening, watching the sun reflect on the flowing water. John shook his head gently. "No, it was you who kept moving forward," he replied. "I was just here to make sure you had a chance to return. You carried your own courage every step of the way." Their conversations were filled with gratitude, understanding, and a recognition of the bond that had grown between them, an unspoken connection formed through shared trials and trust. John's experience with the tribe also changed the way he viewed the wider world. He had always valued nature, solitude, and personal challenge, but he now understood the profound importance of human connection, empathy, and service. Helping Ayanna had been the starting point, but the acceptance, respect, and honor he had received had taught him that life's true value often lay in acts of kindness, no matter how small they seemed. He realized that each person he encountered could leave an imprint on his life, and he could leave one on theirs, if only he acted with courage and integrity. The months passed, and John's bond with the village strengthened. He continued to visit regularly, even after Ayanna had returned to her normal life, fully healed. He shared knowledge from his travels, helping the villagers improve their techniques for survival and learning from their deep understanding of the land. Over time, he became a bridge between worlds, someone who had experienced both solitude in nature and the richness of community life. Each visit reminded him that kindness and courage were universal values, recognized across cultures, lands, and people. Years later, John would reflect on the experience as a defining chapter of his life. The story of saving Ayanna, the journey through the canyon, and the acceptance by her tribe had transformed him profoundly. It had taught him lessons he carried into every interaction, every challenge, and every decision. He understood that courage was not measured by physical strength alone, but by the willingness to act selflessly, to respect others, and to embrace trust even in uncertain circumstances. John also maintained a lasting friendship with Ayanna and her tribe. He visited during festivals, helped in times of need, and continued to learn from the elders. Every visit reminded him that life was not merely about survival or personal achievement, but about the connections we make, the lives we touch, and the values we uphold. The moment he had saved Ayanna had become a defining story, not only for him, but for everyone whose life had been touched by his courage and compassion. Reflecting on everything, John realized that the journey had changed him in ways he could never have anticipated. He had entered a canyon to help someone in need and emerged with a deeper understanding of humanity, trust, and community. His life had been altered not by fame or fortune, but by the simple, powerful act of helping another human being. And in return, he had received something far greater: acceptance, friendship, and a new perspective on the importance of living with integrity and heart. Even in quiet moments, John would often think back to the canyon, to the initial fear and uncertainty, and to the long path he had walked with Ayanna. He would remember her courage, the trust of her family, the wisdom of the elders, and the bond that had formed through shared experience. These memories were not just stories. They were lessons etched deeply into his soul, guiding him in every step he took in the years that followed. In the end, John understood the most important truth of all: one act of selfless courage can change more than one life. It can ripple outward, touching hearts, building trust, and creating bonds that last a lifetime. He had saved Ayanna, yes, but in doing so, he had also saved a part of himself, his capacity for empathy, trust, and meaningful connection. The experience had shown him that the choices we make in moments of courage define not only our own lives, but also the lives of those around us, often in ways we could never imagine. As the sun set over the village one evening, John stood quietly, looking at the community that had embraced him so fully. Children played, elders shared stories, and Ayanna laughed with her friends. He felt a sense of peace and fulfillment unlike anything he had known before. He had been changed by courage, honored for integrity, and connected through trust. His life had been forever transformed by one simple act of helping someone in need, and the ripple effects of that act would continue to shape his journey for years to come.